Welcome to Crop Talk, brought to you by Innovative Ag Services, and this is our Field Scouting Special.
Each week from March through October, our agronomy team shares timely, boots-on-the-ground updates from across the IAS geography, so you can make confident decisions as the seasons change. Today, you'll hear a quick regional update from our IAS agronomists, including what we're seeing in the fields right now, what to keep an eye on next, and a few practical scouting reminders you can put to work this week.
I'm your host, Nick Thompson, and this week we'll be diving into some regional updates along with talking about some mid-season stress prevention, getting out in front of our fungicide pass, and disease pressure. Over here for the West Side update, I'll be updating for both the Ellsworth location and Cleves location. As we go further south, I noticed this past weekend got a little more rain. Up north, things started to kind of taper off to the point where people were out in the field maybe late yesterday, even if not early today. And we've just been focused on getting our post spraying done. For Ellsworth here, I know we're sitting good, got about all of our corn done, and then moving on to the beans here later this week. Weed control, I would say things got a little hairier early on, but I've seen great burn down potential and great ability to keep things down with the plants that we've been running out of Ellsworth here. Just be careful to not bury yourself into the field getting out there when it's too wet. Be sure to always walk the wettest spots of your field. You don't want to step in there and be looking around thinking it's dry, and then you come over the hill and all of a sudden your sprayer tires have sunk into the ground. That's never fun, and then you end up ruining a good amount of crop to get that machine out of there, and we would have just been better off with maybe a few more weeds and getting out there when it was safe. Coming up ahead, I've been seeing a few deficiencies starting to pop up. We're kind of hitting that crop stage where we're going to start really using a lot of those nutrients, and you'll probably start to see some of those deficiencies pop up that you wouldn't have seen earlier this spring. And as we're walking out there, just know we have different fertilizers, whether it's liquid or dry options, that we can put over the top and help us get through the season. Just making sure that you're talking with your local agronomist whenever you see something like that pop up. Know your threshold of what you can put on, what you can't put on, and what's going to make you money versus when it's time to just cut and run. As we reach later in the season here, just keep thinking about fungicide passes. If you have it booked, think about the timing. Just make sure we get out there around tassel time before the disease. Keep that disease pressure down, and we'll be touching on that a little bit later. But I'll send it over here to our Northeast region, over to Aaron.
Thank you, Nick. I'm Erin Recker out of the Masonville location. I cover Buchanan, Delaware, and parts of Fayette and Clayton County. Like Nick has mentioned, over the past couple days, my area has gotten anywhere from 1 to 3 inches of rain, depending on where you're at. But before that rain, we got a good start on some corn post acres. So once it dries back up, we'll get out there and get those knocked out and start on beans. Just a reminder, if you have seed boxes or pallets still out in your shed, let your agronomist know so we can get someone out there to get those picked up in time for seed return. Other than that, I would say the crops are looking pretty good around here. Most of our pre's held for both corn and beans. There were some fields that got sprayed and we had no rain to activate them for a while, so we did see some weed pressure there. But overall, I would say the pre's did their job. We are getting to the point where some of those pre-residuals are going to start running out, especially with the amount of rain we have gotten. So making sure we get back out there as soon as possible when it dries up is going to be important to get any of those emerged weeds killed and to get that last layer of residual on before the corn canopy. As for beans, they're still not far enough along yet for a post application, but still get out and scout those fields to make sure everything's going good and see what weed pressure is looking like, so you know what order fields need to be sprayed in when that time comes. With talking about getting back out in the field, Nick mentioned just make sure the field conditions are right. Another thing to remember is make sure our environmental conditions are right as well. Be checking the weather to see where you're at with the 150-degree spraying rule. To check this, you take your temperature and add the relative humidity together to get a target score. If that adds up to over 150, just make sure we're adjusting our adjuvant or surfactant rates to try to avoid any crop injury response. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Adriana in our Southeast region.
Thank you, Erin. I'm Adriana Herlash, covering Jones County and parts of Delaware County. Definitely what I've noticed here this last week, like Erin and Nick touched on, residuals did their job for the most part in our pre's. We've had a couple instances where we got that dry spell for 3 weeks, and then we're definitely seeing it wear off now. It got broken down a little bit, didn't work probably as good as we would have hoped, especially corn-wise. We're getting out there now, we're getting that post on. Definitely touching back to what Aaron said about that 150 degree, we need to watch that. So actually, I went out and checked some fields yesterday, and you can definitely see a little bit of burn, especially in the corn. Too many oils, environment's too hot. What I've noticed in bean fields, had a couple bean fields have a post pass. Water hemp was thick. I'm starting to notice water hemp coming back up. I've seen some where it's already reaching 6-7 inches tall. At that point, you need to have a talk with your agronomist and might need to get out there and get something on. Because if it gets too tall, you're not going to be able to control it. So a good rule of thumb that I like to go by, especially regarding water hemp in beans, 4 quarts. Your quart of Roundup, your quart of Class Act, quart of Enlist, and quart of Liberty. It's not fit for every situation, but if you're noticing water hemp becoming a prevalent issue, especially early, those 4 are going to ensure good coverage, especially if you're getting out there and getting it taken care of before it's getting too tall. But that's what I like to go by, especially down here. I'll kick it back to Nick. Nick, could you give us a little information on a post-pass additive, MicroBoost?
Yeah, so MicroBoost would be a new product that Innovative Ag Services just released, working with Brant on that micronutrient fertilizer. It's going to be a liquid at about 1 to 2 quarts application per acre. I like to use it as a late season stress mitigator. We're reaching the point where the corn's getting taller and they're really going to start uptaking those micronutrients and that nitrogen at a much higher rate now. So if you're seeing those deficiencies pop up, this is a really easy product to just come over the top with and run it at a quart or 2 quarts an acre, and it'll mitigate whatever stress you're seeing out there. It's very compatible with any herbicide passes or any tank mix partners if you're just looking to throw it into your post if you haven't run that post yet. Its main attributes, I would say, would be the sulfur content, the boron, and the manganese. With this MicroBoost pass, it can go over corn or beans. I typically like to put it over the post pass, although you can apply it at fungicide time. You just won't see the results that you would at post timing. We have a product called Kernel Boost that you'd probably see a better return from if you applied it at fungicide timing. Have you guys on the east side used any of it, and what results have you seen?
I've gotten some MicroBoost out on the post side on the corn, and there's still some to be going out with the beans. But since we haven't done post yet on that, we won't be seeing the results on that for a little bit. But I do agree with Nick. We're getting into the time of the season where the crop is taking up a lot of nutrients and we're going to start to see some deficiencies in it. And this MicroBoost package is a great add-on to throw in the tank, kind of help with that stress that's going on with the crop and help mitigate it. Also, it's a variable, reasonable price to our growers, which is also important, especially with how fertilizer prices have been going in the grain market and stuff. So here's an added product that Innovative Ag has made solely for our growers in these situations and giving them a good product for a good ROI.
Yeah, I've got some split fields we did. I'm excited to see, the results from those. It's a little early to tell yet, but I put some flags out. I'm going to keep track of it through the summer, keep checking on it, see what that result is. Affordability is there. You compare to other products that, growers might be using. This is definitely in the market, and it's meant to fit our regions that we're applying this in. It was made for our areas. Our agronomists at Innovative Ag worked with Brant Systems to create these products. We have them tailored to what our growers' needs are.
Yeah, and I think those results we've seen on both the west and the east side have been pretty consistent. I know the corn that we had it go over, I came back out there about a week later and took a look at it, and it is a dark green, and any variability in plant size seemed to kind of work itself out, and they all kind of came up and they were off and running. Now, not every instance may not wind up like that, but just to see that after a week and kind of have our problems settled, that was a very comforting thing to see as an agronomist. And it's always nice when you look out at the field and see the product that you put on and that you recommended was a great fit for that program. One thing we touched on a little bit earlier, and I do want to touch on it again here, backing down those oils with the hot weather we're going to have here. That's going to be a huge deal for us, especially as we start to get into bean post. And if there's guys running a little hairier fields a little earlier on those beans, you can cause a good amount of damage with not backing down your oils. So I just pull out Destiny HC. Usually we're running it at about 8 ounces to the acre. When you guys hit that 150 mark, what do you usually end up backing down? We'll say a Destiny rate too.
Well, I know down here in Jones, I take out the Destiny and I use Interlock. And a lot of post-pass products, especially in corn, they already have an oil in them. If you're going to be using a drift agent like Interlock, or you're going to be using even like Triple Flex 2, it has an oil in it. You don't need to add any more, especially when you're reaching that 150.
I would agree with you on that, AJ. Another option would be, if you're not really wanting something as hot as Destiny, running an MSO just with the heat and stuff, maybe considering bumping it down to COC and kind of switching that out, just so you still have some oil with whatever herbicide you're running. But some of those herbicides that you're running, you don't need to add any or very little amount to. With this heat coming in, especially on post soybeans, there's going to be a lot of crop injury if guys aren't watching and kind of keeping track of that stuff and switching out where it needs to be switched out. What are your thoughts on that, Nick?
Typically over here in Ellsworth, on a lot of our corn posts, we don't run hardly any oil over it, just because, like you said, a lot of those adjuvants and the products that are coming out now, they have oil already included into them. But oils are a very big portion of our bean programs. Just this last week, there was a few days where maybe we went out to get some beans that the pre may have slipped on, and things got a little hairy out there. So we had to get out there early, just backing it down, 2 ounces to the acre even. You'll still get a little ding on the beans, but it'd be nothing but a little browning on the edge of some of the leaves. If we're up above, 165 or 170 in our total count, then yeah, you might want to just cut that oil out, especially if you got another oil-based herbicide in the plan. Keep in mind and keep ahead of, as we're looking at the weather here, just remembering that 150 rule on your oils will definitely make a greater impact, and you should see a better result.
To kind of piggyback off of what Nick just said, he does make a good point. Sometimes having that MSO in there is needed, especially on the bean post side of things. When weeds are getting too tall and stuff, sometimes heating up the mix is what's needed to make sure we get a good kill on that. Are you guys starting to have conversations with growers about fungicide and the timing on that and getting stuff lined up?
I know we're having those conversations here. It may seem too early, but now is the time. I know every year's going to be a little different, but you look at last year and fungicide was definitely almost a must in a lot of acres. Those southerly winds that we got and storms that we got just brought it up here. You got to have those conversations and you got to stay ahead. So I know I've been having some of those around here, trying to get it in commitments too. We want to make sure we have enough product here to supply for the acres that we need to.
Yeah, no, that's definitely been a topic of conversation here these past week or so for me. A lot of guys, they don't want to think about it. It's kind of the same discussion that I have a lot of times with pre's where, well, there's no weeds out there, so why should we warrant spraying it? But at the end of the day, if you're waiting until the disease shows up, that's too late. It's more so preventative than it is going to be curative. If you're going out there and you already have tar spot or southern rust out there and it's starting to spread on those plants, spraying fungicide will mitigate the damage, but it won't be able to stop it completely.
And, Nick's not saying that if you see disease, you're necessarily too late to apply anything. I'd rather see stuff out a little after it's noticed than not at all. And that's where, we also, we had touched on kernel boost. That's when you would add that in. You go with your fungicide, your kernel boost, and insecticide if needed. And you can definitely see, some turnaround. You can stop the progression. I mean, you're not going to prevent it, but you can stop it from making it worse and affecting yield.
Exactly. You should still spray because, like I said, you're going to mitigate that damage that disease can do. Talking about kernel boost here, I'm looking at some of the benefits that we present, and I think a big portion of this that we could see come into play heavy this year would be two things. either nitrogen assimilation or drought and heat stress. When you've been looking out at some fields, because I know I have you guys been seeing some drought and heat stress whipping in the leaves and some curling?
Yeah, I've seen some of it across the fields that I've walked in the territory I cover. Putting that kernel boost in on your fungicide pass on your corn, it's going to help a lot because you're getting some of that nitrogen, but also you're getting some soluble potash with it. We will be seeing some good responses with that and helping maximize yield potential and help prevent any nutrient deficiencies during that grain fill time. Any guys that didn't put any stabilizer in with their nitrogen and all the rain that we've had, we could start to be seeing some nitrogen deficiencies here soon or later down the road. So I think having that kernel boost and with the fungicide pass is going to help that out a lot too.
I know I've seen a little bit of curling, especially in the corn. Now that we got the rain, I haven't seen it as much. But, by the end of evening time, a couple of days last week, you see them rolled up by morning. They're back open. The heat, the humidity, the dryness, it's definitely taking a little bit of a toll, but things are looking a lot better now.
If you have any more questions on kernel boost or micro boost, feel free to reach out to your local agronomist. We'd be happy to share any information and handouts that we have of this product with you.
That's all for this week's Crop Talk by IAS. Thanks for tuning in. If any of our listeners have questions, feel free to email them to croptalk@innovativeag.com. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe so you don't miss next week's update. And if you know a fellow grower who'd value a quick field snapshot, share this episode with them. For more agronomy resources and to connect with your local IAS team, visit innovativeag.com and follow Innovative Ag Services on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. We'll catch you next week on Crop Talk.